Without trucks, the world would be in a totally different place, and our modern comforts wouldn't exist the way we know it. In the United States, there are already 14 million trucks on the road. A large portion of these trucks are the long wheelbase trucks. If you're just as passionate about trucks as we are, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Let's delve into the concept of wheelbase. What exactly is it? How to measure it accurately, and why it holds significance? Wheelbase is essentially the distance between the center point of the front axle and the midpoint between the drive axles at the rear. In the earlier days, particularly up until the mid-1960s, tractor-trailer lengths in the US were capped at 55 feet overall. This meant that there was a strict maximum length limit for tractor-trailer configurations. However, as we transitioned into the late 1960s and early 1970s, there was a shift in perspective. Shippers began lobbying the federal government for longer trailers, initially increasing from 35 to 40 feet. Consequently, trailer length started to grow in order to meet the demands of shippers. Yet, there was a dilemma. As trailers extended, tractors had to be shortened to maintain the overall length restriction of 55 feet. This posed challenges for truck drivers and companies alike, as smaller trucks weren't conducive to longer journeys, despite the push for increased efficiency. Recognizing these issues, around 1970, the federal authorities intervened. They realized that the imposed restrictions were burdensome on truck drivers and hindered operational efficiency. Thus, they made a pivotal decision to eliminate the overall length restriction, allowing each state to determine its own regulations regarding trailer lengths. Consequently, the focus shifted solely to trailer length measurements, granting more flexibility for truck designs. This strategic move not only accommodated the evolving needs of the industry, but also addressed practical concerns such as road conditions, ensuring that trucks could adapt to varying terrains more effectively. Even in those days, the federal authorities faced financial constraints in addressing infrastructure issues like potholes. To alleviate some of the challenges faced by truckers, they opted for a slightly longer wheelbase. This adjustment not only improved the ride quality for drivers, but also allowed for larger sleeping quarters, contributing to driver satisfaction. Moreover, it tackled the issue of swing depth clearance, which refers to the distance between the truck and the trailer during sharp turns, thus preventing collisions. By extending the wheelbase, instances of damaged bunk extenders, a common sight in the past, became less frequent. Additionally, extending the wheelbase offered various other benefits. For example, it provided more airflow to refrigerated units when pulling a reefer trailer compared to a setup where the tractor was tightly positioned against the reefer unit, enhancing efficiency. Importantly, regardless of the trailer length's legal requirements at the time, extending the tractor length was permissible. It's crucial to note that this occurred in the era before air ride suspension systems were widespread, meaning that longer wheelbases were particularly beneficial for maintaining stability and comfort on the road. Disadvantages. While there were a few drawbacks, they weren't particularly significant at the time. One drawback was the slightly increased fuel consumption. However, considering that fuel prices were only around 50 cents per gallon back then, the extra cost wasn't a major concern for most. Relaxing the overall length regulation allowed trailers to grow larger while ensuring trucks became more comfortable, accommodating larger sleeping quarters based on drivers' preferences for extended stays on the road. Dropping the overall length regulation was advantageous for drivers, offering more comfort and flexibility. Advantages. Every action has its consequences, and allowing longer wheelbases had its own set of advantages and drawbacks. One noticeable advantage was the increased stability that came with a longer wheelbase. However, this also meant heavier trucks, which required additional reinforcement, adding weight and potentially compromising maneuverability. To address this, improvements were made in steering mechanisms, particularly in larger conventional trucks. Additionally, longer wheelbases introduced the risk of high siding, where the truck's undercarriage could get caught on sharp points like driveways, posing a potential obstacle during maneuvers. Now, with a shorter wheelbase, this issue wouldn't occur because the drive axles would be positioned closer to the front, lifting the truck as it encounters rises. However, on a longer wheelbase truck, there's a risk of getting hung up on the fuel tanks, a common problem with extremely long wheelbase configurations. I've witnessed drivers experiencing this firsthand. On the positive side, when it comes to scaling a longer wheelbase truck, the extended wheelbase tends to distribute the engine weight more effectively. Essentially, the weight of the motor is primarily supported by the steering axle alone, which simplifies scaling. However, as trucks grew longer, many scales, especially those at private facilities and factories, didn't expand proportionally. This meant that often trucks couldn't fit on the scales, necessitating axle-by-axle scaling, which was quite inconvenient. Of course, as with any trend, there was a tendency to take things too far. Long wheelbase trucks became somewhat of a fashion statement. Nowadays, at truck shows, it's common to see trucks with wheelbases exceeding 300 inches, which certainly look impressive. However, such trucks often sacrifice fuel efficiency and maneuverability due to their excessive length. Finding the ideal wheelbase depends on various factors such as usage, trailer type, and personal preference. For instance, if you're pulling a flatbed, a longer wheelbase can allow you to overhang the load without exceeding length limits. However, for carriers running drop deck or dry van trailers, a wheelbase ranging from 220 to 235 inches in a long hood conventional is often preferred. Personally, I've found a 280-inch wheelbase to be very manageable and versatile, striking a balance between scalability and maneuverability. When Kenworth introduced the Studio Sleeper, they determined that a 280-inch wheelbase was necessary to accommodate the spacious bunk. This longer wheelbase is also favored by drivers at carriers like Reliable, where individuals essentially live in their trucks, sometimes away from home for months at a stretch. These extended wheelbases, often exceeding 300 inches, are essential to provide enough room for the 120 to 130-inch sleeper berths these drivers require for comfort during long hauls. However, it's crucial to consider that such configurations add significant weight to the truck. For example, a tractor from Reliable can weigh as much as 30,000 pounds, which cuts into the payload capacity, particularly for lighter cargo, such as automobiles. Therefore, the wheelbase must be carefully chosen based on the intended application. For instance, a long wheelbase suitable for a driver living in their truck might not be practical for hauling heavy loads like steel or lumber due to weight restrictions. Selecting the appropriate wheelbase length is critical for the truck's functionality. For trucks primarily used for showcasing purposes, length isn't as much of a concern, but for working tractors, a wheelbase of around 280 to 290 inches is common for long hood configurations. For drop-nose trucks, a maximum wheelbase of about 235 inches is typical, allowing room for adjusting the fifth wheel position while also considering swing tip clearances. However, some drivers fall into the trap of prioritizing aesthetics over practicality, opting for excessively long wheelbases solely for their visual appeal. Unfortunately, many of these drivers soon realize that their trucks are too cumbersome to navigate in various locations and end up having to incur significant expenses to shorten the frame. Maneuvering such large trucks requires exceptional skill and experience, highlighting the expertise of drivers who can successfully operate them in demanding conditions. The evolution of truck wheelbases reflects a delicate balance between comfort, practicality, and functionality. From accommodating spacious sleeper berths to navigating various terrains, the choice of wheelbase length plays a pivotal role in the trucking industry. While longer wheelbases offer increased comfort for drivers spending extended periods on the road, they also come with weight and maneuverability considerations. Ultimately, understanding the nuances of wheelbase selection is crucial for optimizing efficiency and ensuring a smooth journey for both drivers and their cargo. What kind of truck are you driving? If you would like to see more trucking videos, then don't forget to subscribe to our channel.